My name is David Ross, and I am 47 years old. I spent most of my adult life in the Marine Corps, moving from desert heat to cold dawn patrols, learning how to stand straight, even when everything around me felt sideways. When I finally stepped out of uniform and into civilian life, I thought I had earned a quieter chapter, so I joined a defense logistics firm where discipline and order were supposed to mean something. That belief cracked the night someone told me to kneel on a ballroom floor and wipe up a spill like I was invisible. It happened so fast I barely felt my own reaction. One moment I was standing near a table surrounded by retired generals and long-time clients, and the next moment Claire tilted her glass just enough for champagne to run down the front of my jacket. She did not flinch or apologize. She only pointed at the puddle spreading across the floor and told me to clean it up like it was my job. I felt every eye land on me, and for a second I wondered if I had stepped back into some nightmare where I had lost all rank and all identity. I knelt because my body moved before my pride could catch up. The carpet smelled of liquor and perfume, and the room hummed with quiet conversations that pretended nothing was happening. I could feel my face heat up as I dabbed at the spill with a thin napkin that dissolved in my hand. My throat tightened and I kept my eyes down because looking up meant facing the shock or pity on the faces around me. I told myself to breathe, to stay steady, to keep the anger locked in place. But something small shifted inside me that night, something I had held together for years. I realized they were not just disrespecting my work, they were trying to erase who I was, and that was the moment the story truly began. When I first left the Marines, I thought the hardest part would be learning how to slow down. What I didn't expect was how hard it would be to feel useful again. The structure, the chain of command, the clarity of purpose, those things don't follow you home when you hang up the uniform. I was lucky. A buddy from my last deployment told me about a small logistics outfit started by a former Army officer named Jim Maddox. It wasn't flashy. It was 2 desks in a rented trailer near the port, a few computers, and a whiteboard covered in acronyms. But it had something I recognized: purpose. Jim didn't care about your resume. He looked you in the eye and paid attention to how you showed up. The first day he handed me a clipboard and said, "Just don't screw it up." I didn't. I logged every shipment, every discrepancy, every misplaced barcode like it was mission critical. Within 6 months, I was running procurement. By year 2, Jim handed me operations. He didn't make speeches or give pep talks. He trusted you to handle what you were given, and if you earned more, he gave you more. That kind of leadership sticks with you. We didn't chase big contracts or try to scale too fast. We did things by the book. We delivered on time, kept our records clean, and owned our mistakes. Word got around. Clients stayed. New ones came because they knew we were steady. Jim and I didn't talk about feelings, but there was a kind of unspoken respect that built over time. He'd leave notes on my desk in his tight handwriting. "Move quick on Weller. Don't let Sterling slip." That was his way of saying, "I trust you." When he had his first heart scare, he gave me the building key and said, "Keep it moving." That was it. No ceremony. Just a quiet transfer of responsibility. I didn't see it as a promotion. I saw it as duty. We weathered some rough years. A contract got pulled. One of our carriers went under. A warehouse flooded during hurricane season. But we stood through it. Not because we had deep pockets or brilliant strategy. We just showed up, stayed honest, and outworked the chaos. Those early days weren't easy, but they were real. We earned every bit of ground we stood on. And I thought maybe this is what the second act of my life looks like. Not medals, not handshakes. Just purpose. Quiet. Steady. Meaningful. When the call came, I was in the middle of finalizing a shipment schedule. My phone lit up with a number I hadn't seen in years, but I knew who it was before I picked up. Jim's wife, Laura. Her voice cracked on the first word. She said it was peaceful, but he just didn't wake up. I stared at the wall at the same clock we'd hung in the office 15 years ago and felt something tighten in my chest that wouldn't let go. I didn't cry. I just sat there, phone pressed to my ear, feeling the silence on the other end settle into my bones. Jim was gone, and with him, the quiet force that kept this place anchored. That night, I left late, locked the office myself, made sure the lights were off, the logbooks closed like he would have done. The change didn't come right away. For a while, everything stayed steady. Then Ethan showed up. A sharp suit, bright smile, full of talk about strategy and scale. He was Jim's nephew, though they'd barely spoken in the past decade. His handshake was firm, but his eyes wandered while you spoke. He didn't see the operation. He saw opportunity. He came in with consultants with whiteboards and action plans. Said words like disruption and pivot like they were spells. The staff looked at me confused. I told them to hold steady, that we'd ride this out. But then came Claire. She wasn't on the org chart. Just appeared one morning, introduced as Ethan's advisor. No title. No role. Just started sitting in meetings, making notes, whispering in corners. At first I thought she was temporary, a PR fix or family friend. But she didn't leave. She dug in. I noticed it in small ways. A client meeting I wasn't invited to. A project handed off without explanation. My weekly review presentations edited without notice. When I asked about the changes, Ethan brushed it off. Said we were modernizing. That I should embrace flexibility. Claire started correcting my team in front of clients. Offering feedback on areas she didn't own. Logistics, decisions, vendor contracts, even scheduling. Once she rewrote a safety protocol memo and signed it herself. No discussion. No approval. I went to Ethan. Told him we needed clearer lines. He smiled, said Claire brought a fresh lens. That maybe I needed to evolve with the culture. I nodded, walked out and sat in my truck for 20 minutes, hands on the wheel, heart pounding. Meetings became longer, louder, more about performance than progress. Claire called them energizers. I called them distractions. Staff started copying her buzzwords. The air in the office changed. Less focus. More show. But I stayed. I adjusted. I told myself this was temporary. But deep down I felt it. The ground was shifting. And I was standing still. The changes came slowly, like water wearing down stone. At first it was just one meeting I wasn't needed in. Then a report I always reviewed was suddenly reassigned. No reason. Just a shift, casual and quiet. Claire began offering feedback on my tone during updates. Said I needed to sound more engaged, more aligned. I was discussing procurement delays, not giving a TED talk. But I nodded, adjusted my slide deck and kept going. I thought if I stayed calm, I could steer things back on course. Then they took the Weller account. My longest standing client. The one Jim had handed me personally years ago after a brutal audit that nearly lost them. I'd rebuilt that trust brick by brick. And now it was handed to Marcus, a new hire who once asked if we could invoice clients through Venmo. Ethan called it rotating leadership for growth. I called it a gut punch. There was no conversation, no thanks, no acknowledgement. Just a quick handoff in the team chat. I showed up the next day like nothing happened. Still early. Still prepared. Still silent. But inside something started to pull apart. They stopped asking for my opinion. Claire rewrote my logistics brief and presented it without my name on the deck. I wasn't included in strategy calls, even when they involved departments I built from scratch. I became a fixture. Present but ignored. Seen but unseen. Small humiliations piled up. Claire once corrected a data chart I had triple-checked, then shared her version with the board even though it was wrong. Ethan added a new title to his email signature every month. Chief Strategy Architect. Chief Vision Sherpa. It was a parade of noise. Meanwhile, I kept the trains running. No recognition. No thanks. Just quiet competence. That used to matter. Now it felt invisible. The real erosion came not from any single moment, but from the way everything around me changed shape. The respect I'd earned became something people forgot. My authority faded until all I had left was memory. But I didn't lash out, didn't storm off. I watched, took notes. Not out of pettiness, out of clarity. Something inside me had gone still, not broken, focused, like waiting for a signal, because deep down I knew. This wasn't the end. It was the start of something else. The ballroom was loud with laughter and clinking glasses, but my corner near the bar felt like a quiet cave. I saw Claire weaving through the crowd in a silver jacket that sparkled under the LED lights. She locked eyes with me, smiled like we were old friends, and stepped in too close. Her glass tilted just enough to spill champagne straight down my shirt. Cold. Sticky. The kind of accident that isn't. She gasped fake and bright and told me to clean it up. Her voice loud enough for the guests from the Pentagon to turn their heads. I didn't move right away. Just stood there soaked and still while the room watched. No one helped. No one said anything. Claire held her smile like a trophy. I bent down, picked up a napkin, blotted at the carpet while my shirt clung to my skin. I didn't look up. Not at Claire. Not at Ethan. Not at the clients who now thought I was part of the cleanup crew. I wasn't angry. Not yet. It was something colder than that. Something final. Like a door inside me had closed and locked. When I stood back up, I wasn't the same man who walked into that gala. Something had cracked quietly and forever. I walked out without a word. Past the noise, past the cameras, past the new hire live streaming the event like it was history in the making. At home, I didn't change my shirt. I didn't pour a drink. I opened the hallway closet, pulled out the old fireproof box Jim had given me, and finally, after all those years, I knew why he said I'd know when it was time. The binder was heavier than I remembered. Tucked behind a rusted toolbox and old Marine Corps medals sealed in the fireproof box Jim gave me before his surgery. Only open it if you have to. I had always thought that meant some kind of disaster. Turns out it was this. I flipped it open, heart steady, breath shallow. Section after section of old governance notes, internal memos, dry legal phrasing, scribbled with Jim's handwriting. Then I saw it. Section 8. Founder's Reversion Clause. If the company entered a period of hostile mismanagement, voting power would revert to a trustee named in the charter for 180 days. The trustee was me. Signed, notarized, dated years ago. Quiet power tucked beneath layers of faith. He had seen the storm coming. Not their faces maybe, but the kind of rot that spreads when no one's watching. He gave me the key to stop it. Now I had to use it. I set the binder on the kitchen table, pulled out my laptop, opened a blank folder titled INIT, IATE. The clock said 10:03 p. I worked in silence, no music, no breaks. Just documents, flagged emails, archived chats. I searched Claire's name. Found calendar, invites, Slack threads, internal memos with her initials on decisions she had no authority to make. Her LinkedIn was the nail. She listed herself as executive advisor to the firm. That was a direct violation. No board vote. No record. No approval. Just ego and access. I took screenshots, dropped them in a folder called Unauthorized Appointment. Then came Ethan. Buzzwords in his decks, decisions. He wasn't qualified to make signatures on contracts he barely read. I pulled up the gala photos. Claire giving orders, sitting in client meetings, making announcements like she ran the place. I filed them under governance breach. Every Slack comment that mocked compliance. Every red line ignored. Every moment they cut corners and smiled about it. I found it all. Compiled it. Named it. Dated it. The hardest part was documenting the humiliations. The way they talked over me. The way they sideline my voice, the champagne, the charts, the fake smiles and public corrections. I had saved drafts of complaints I never filed. I filed them now, one by one, labeled hostile environment. Around 3 in the morning, I started the letter, addressed it to Mark, the company's general counsel. He would know the clause. He helped draft it. I kept it clean, factual, cited policy violations attachments, ended with a single line. Effective immediately upon validation, I assume interim trustee control per Section 8. I printed 5 copies, 1 for Mark, 1 for legal, 1 for HR, 1 for the board secretary, 1 for me. I sealed his in a heavy envelope labeled confidential. Then I scheduled a courier for 9 a.m. sharp. Timing mattered. By 6, I was dressed, coffee in hand, laptop bag packed, calm, focused, ready. The invitation for the HR meeting arrived at 8:07. Subject line, quick check-in. No agenda. Just me, Ethan, Claire, and HR listed as optional. Perfect. Let them think I was walking into a firing. Let them get comfortable. Because in 3 hours that binder would be on the table, and their entire world would shift. David walked into the boardroom like it was just another meeting. Slacks, grey blazer, clean shave. No fanfare. Ethan barely looked up, pen spinning through his fingers. Claire stood by the window, already holding the envelope like it was her trophy. HR sat to the side, typing nothing. Claire's voice was sugar and steel. She said it was time for a change, that his role no longer aligned with the company's direction. David listened, without flinching, eyes steady. Ethan slid the envelope across the table with the smug grace of a man who thought he had already won. David laid his ID badge on the table and calmly said they wouldn't need it. Before Claire could respond, there were 3 sharp knocks on the glass. A courier stepped in, cream envelope in hand. David motioned for him to deliver it to legal. Ethan narrowed his eyes. Claire laughed, called it a bluff. David simply said it was paperwork. The room tilted. Ethan shifted. HR looked at the plant in the corner like it might rescue her. Claire asked again what this was. David didn't blink. He said they were triggering a clause they didn't even know existed. That they had been sloppy. That was when Mark, the company's general counsel, walked in. Binder in hand, eyes locked. He placed the binder on the table and opened it to Section 8. Claire asked if it was symbolic. Mark said no. This is governance, not poetry. He read it aloud. Trustee powers. Effective immediately. Ethan tried to interrupt. Carol, the board secretary, entered next. She said it was valid, that no board vote could override it. David sat across from them, not gloating, just centered. Carol asked if he wished to enact temporary control. David nodded. Signed the line. The room shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, but permanently. Claire's face fell. Ethan rubbed his hands, knuckles tight. They didn't speak. They couldn't. David spoke instead. Calm. Direct. He ordered an audit. Froze executive decisions. Reinstated protocols. Mark backed him. Carol logged it all. There were no raised voices, no shouting. Just motion, precision, authority. Ethan was placed on leave. Claire was barred from operations. The binder sat open on the table like a verdict. David didn't smile, didn't gloat. He just stood up, thanked them for their time, and walked out. The boardroom didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt honest. I walked into the office early the next morning before the elevators got busy and the coffee machine started hissing. The executive suite felt different now. The posters with buzzwords were still on the walls, but they looked out of place. I didn't announce that I was in charge. I simply sat at the founder's old seat, turned on the lights, opened the blinds, and let daylight fill the room. I didn't call a company-wide celebration or send out a memo with grand language. I said to the assistant that the audit should begin today. I asked her to gather all contracts since the founder passed away. I asked the young operations lead to review vendor invoices. No fanfare, just work. I walked past the main hallway and saw the staff shifting in the new rhythm. They were quieter, more focused, less worried about image. The coffee machine was back to black. No foam swirls, no latte art. The team laughed softly at a joke about an overstuffed spreadsheet that got fixed. I stopped and told the lead analyst, "Thanks for catching that." It wasn't big, but it was real. I mentored the interns in the lunchroom instead of sending them away. I told them I had started as what they were now. Sometimes I asked about their weekends. Sometimes I asked about what bugged them here. They told me about the long meetings that went nowhere, about the emails late at night that felt like theater instead of work. I nodded and said we're going back to purpose. I scheduled weekly check-ins with middle management that had felt invisible. We reviewed performance, not buzzwords. We measured delivery, not hashtags. I walked through the floor and noticed the heating vent that had been leaking for months. I ordered the fix. No press release. Just done. People noticed. They nodded. Clients came back. Weller and Sterling both emailed the first week. They didn't mention the takeover. They only said they were glad operations had normalized. The Becker account reopened. I called their lead and asked if we could pick up where we left off. He asked if anything changed. I said yes. We're back to being dependable. I didn't fire people left and right. I reviewed decisions and asked quiet questions. If someone had acted outside their scope, I asked them to explain. If it was worthy, we folded the work back in. If not, we moved them to roles where they could thrive rather than fail. The office felt calmer. The staff came in earlier. The meetings were shorter. The hours felt purposeful. 2 months in, I looked at the city skyline through the window behind the desk. The chair creaked, just the way I remembered when the founder sat there. I placed my hands on the polished oak. The sun hit at just the right angle. I thought of all the late nights I'd spent fixing spreadsheets, rebuilding trust, and holding my silence while the ground shifted beneath me. I thought of the gala, the binder, the takeover, but more than that, I thought of why I stayed. Leadership does not come from loud declarations. It comes from showing up when things are broken and staying long enough to repair them. I leaned back, feet flat on the floor, gaze steady on the horizon, firm, in the knowledge that this was not victory for one man. This was the preservation of something greater than me, and it would matter long after I left.